first speaker for this blog is going to be Philomena Schwab, a game designer and community manager from Zurich, Switzerland, talking about community building for indie developers. Take it away.
Hello. Do you all hear me? Is it working? Let me quickly check. Good. Okay, perfect. No, my talk is actually a roguelike talk, which is called This is Too Hard: How to Broaden Your Game's Target Audience with Smart Difficulty Tricks, as it was announced in the schedule. So we're gonna jump right in. This is gonna be a very short one, as we just heard. It's a lightning talk, so it's like between 10 to 15 minutes. So we will hopefully have some time for questions at the end. We'll see. So, hello, my name is Philomena Schwab. I'm the co-founder of Strayphon Studio, a 10-people indie team based in Zurich, Switzerland. And we have made 3 games so far, all of which are kinda in the roguelike genre. The first one is called Niche, a genetic survival game, which is a survival roguelike game where you try to keep your animals from going extinct. Then we made Nimbatus, the space drone constructor, which is an action simulation game where you build drones out of a bunch of different parts and send them out on missions. And then very recently, just about a month ago, we launched our third game, which is called The Wandering Village, into Steam Early Access, and it's a city builder with roguelike elements where you build a city on the back of a giant wandering creature. So, as you see when I go over our games, you can see most of them are pretty colorful, they are cute, and like you can imagine that if these kinds of games are difficult, it can be hard to communicate who exactly the target audience is. So let's take an example where that works great. So we have Darkest Dungeon here. You see the setting is kinda grim, it's dark, you see these monsters, and you at the same time see the UI that also looks kinda complex, right, with the map you have going on. And just because of the theme with the skeletons and there's blood in the game and so on, probably means that the target audience is older, so the game is probably for people 12 or even 16 or older, so you already like have that set up. And you can also see when you keep scrolling through their screenshots on Steam, you have screens like these where you see character customization and you can instantly grasp that, okay, this is a pretty complex game. You can like really get deep into it, change the different equipment of your characters and so on. Another example for this would be Dark Souls, where you just look at the screenshot and you're like, okay, the setting is like scary, there is dragons, there is probably fighting. So this appeals to a certain audience, right? And again, as I said, also here with the age limitations, the player are going to be at least teenagers or older. And yeah, both of these are hard games, right? And you kind of already see it just judging from the screenshots. Now imagine you're me and you make these kind of games. They're very cute and colorful. You have these little creatures, and when you browse through the screenshots of Steam, right, this is what you see. So you're like, oh, cool, I want to have some critters and play with them. And then we put some more screenshots to see that it's actually a more complex game. So when you look at this one, okay, so it doesn't just seem to be about having a cute pet, but there's something going on. So you see that it's about genetics, there is different traits. The game is actually quite complex, so like all of your animals' genetics are passed on to the next generation. They have like fertility, or they can be blind, or all kinds of different, also like genetic sicknesses and so on. And then you look at this one and this is probably the most complex screenshot in the game we have to offer, so you kind of see that it has some amount of complexity. And it actually has such high like genetic complexity that it's even used in schools to teach about genetics. So I would say from a difficulty level to grasp the concept and to really have a good run, it's similarly complex to a game such as Darkest Dungeon. And then we also try our best to communicate that it's not just a game about breeding, but also a game that has dangers. So there is like fires, there is sicknesses, there is diseases and so on. And while we try our best to show this in the screenshots, the game still attracts an audience that looks like this. So there's also a bunch, we also have a lot of adult players, but the game has shown that it's really attractive, especially to like younger girls. And then you have the huge challenge that you have an adult target audience that really like the depth and the difficulty of the game, and at the same time you have like children who wanna like play with their animals, and you're kind of trying to serve to cater to both of them, is at least what we tried to do, and that was quite difficult. So I'm gonna show you a little bit of what we did to try to achieve this. So one thing is that we added a system that where you can basically adjust the game's difficulty on the fly while you're inside the game. You are always starting like on a procedurally generated island, and depending on which direction you go to, the game's difficulty will change. So if you go to the left, where you can see all these little flowers, the game gets easier. If you go to the right, the difficulty stays the same. It just switches up basically what type of island you're on. And if you go up, the game gets harder. And so while in the sandbox mode, you can just infinitely travel around, in the story mode, if you want to progress, you're actually always going up. And what we try to do to still allow even players that are not that good to progress in the game is that we just basically let you stock up on resources endlessly. So here you could just stay on this island, stock up 1,000 food, and then go ahead. And then if you go to the harder island and you still feel that it's too hard, you can still just go to the left, exit again, and go back to the previous island and keep preparing more before you go up there again. But it's still a pretty difficult game, even with all these opportunities that you have. That's why we decided to also add in some difficulty settings. So this happened more towards the late time of development, when we were slowly coming out of early access with the game. So this is just your average settings, right? You have in the sandbox mode, you can switch between these different islands and you can see their difficulty and so on. And we also put a lot of work into our difficulty settings. So we found that different players find different things in the game difficult. So some of them found it hard that your animals only live for a very short time and wanted them to live like 3 times as long, so they have time to pass on their gene, which you can do. So you can basically select for each aging level how long it will take. You can have multipliers for damage. Some players like wanted to customize their creatures, so they have a specific set of starting genetics, because they found that if you start with certain genetics, it's impossible to win if you start in certain biomes. And it's also very cool, like for storytelling purposes, you can have like your own custom designed characters and play with them, which allows more for role playing, which is a thing that a lot of especially teenage girls are doing in our game. And then just like some more gameplay settings, how much food you have. You can play in the blind gene mode where you don't get the genes displayed. You can turn off all the predators, and you can also design your own win conditions, so people can like design their own challenges and share them with other players. And that is actually what has kept the game alive in the past few years, where we haven't released any new updates, where you can really customize like a story with its characters and so on. So it hasn't only been great for difficulty adjustments, but also had additional value for the game. But it's a very similar problem with our new game, The Wandering Village, because it's again just looks very colorful and cute. And but it's also a difficult game. Like we tried to show it also a little bit in the UI and the screenshots, that it actually has some challenges too. Here again, also, you're actually also fighting some kind of opponents. But again, our games just very much give you the feel that you want to play them relaxed with a cup of tea. And so when we started into our beta with the game, we had 6,000 beta players, and we constantly gave them new updates and kind of these surveys to figure out what was working, what was not working. And when we were like already pretty close to our launch, like 2 months before our launch, we found that pretty much everybody who rated the game with 7 or below found that it was too difficult, so we were kind of panicking a little bit, like, okay, so we kind of have to figure it out. We don't seem to be able to do it with normal balancing, to be able to cater to everybody, because some people were also saying that it was too hard. So we decided to very quickly implement some kind of very basic difficulty settings that I wanted to share. We already had some tools that let us basically customize every step in the game that you did. So you come into this biome, then you encounter this event, and so on. So we made a very, very long scripted sequence for the novice players, like together with a tutorial. And it took you maybe like, so the first part was fully scripted, like every event is scripted where it exactly happens. Then after 2 hours or so, it gets a bit random. So like hour 2 to 5 are like partially random but still a bit scripted, and then after hour 5 you are in the fully random mode, and it's basically the same difficulty as the veterans difficulty. So the only difference is that you had this scripted intro to the game. Same with the adapt difficulty, where you basically just start with a partially scripted part before you head into the veteran setting. And for such a quick fix, I would say, it basically took us maybe a week or so to implement. It helped a bunch. We barely had any reviews saying that the game was too easy now. Now we get more reviews that the game was too difficult. Now we get more reviews that the game is actually too easy. So now we can like focus on making veteran mode harder. Another thing I would really like to add to the game. We also have some other very basic difficulty settings. Probably what helped a lot is that you can switch off that your people can die and that your creature can die. So this basically turns the game from a survival game into really just a chill experience where you try to manage everybody's happiness, which a lot of people seem to like. But you can also just switch off manual saving, which makes the game a lot harder and more roguelike. So here again, we try to cater to a very broad audience. One thing I would really like to add to the game is something similar to what RimWorld does. I really like that aside from their basic settings, like for difficulty, they also have a storyteller AI. So people often complain that a game feels too random, right? Or that a game feels too scripted. And I really like that they basically let you choose if the game actually adapts its difficulty to what you're doing, or if you get a completely random experience. And I think that is something we would want to implement over time as well, because it would very well fit also the theme of our game. And I'm not seeing a lot of games doing this. I'm wondering why, because I think it's a very genius idea. So, that was already our lightning talk. I'm wondering if the moderators have some questions for me, or if you don't have any questions right now, you can always reach me on Twitter or go ahead and drop me a mail. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Philomena. That was fantastic.
Thanks.
I love a genetics game. Always
Thank you.
a sucker for them. One question that I did see come up was that educational focus part of the initial design, or did it get picked up on later in development as people, picked up on the educational potential for it? For niche, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, the game is just very heavily inspired by genetics. So from the beginning, the plan was to like take the topic of population genetics, which consists of 5 subtopics such as mutation and so on, and turn them into game mechanics. So it's just very heavily science inspired, but it was never our goal to make an educational game. We just found that these mechanics that exist in nature make up for a very cool game, and it also just automatically has a target audience, right? Because people are interested in this.
Yeah.